Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Thanks for joining the conversation. Hi, everyone. I love welcoming back awesome recurring guests like SFG Chief Brett Jones. As usual, our conversation covers a lot of different topics. We discuss everything from AI to writer's block. Brett is currently in the process of writing a book and shares where he finds inspiration and motivation. It wouldn't be a podcast episode without discussing TV shows, and in this episode, we dissect one of our favorites, Battlestar Galactica. Brett Jones is an athletic trainer who currently teaches functional movement systems and kettlebells as the Director of Education for Strong First. He is also really, really strong, so follow him on Instagram to check it out. As always, if you enjoy my podcast, please rate it on your platform of choice and share it with others. If you would like to support with a donation to help keep this podcast going, you can become a patron of the show by visiting my website or patreon.com/SifuMimiChan. For comments or suggestions, reach out on social media at SifuMimiChan. Now, on with the show. Hello, Brett Jones. Thanks for joining me on the podcast again.
Mimi, it's fantastic to have the opportunity to be on again and speak to you and your audience and kind of get through some various topics today.
Oh, yes. Well, I was looking up as I try to be diligent and this is number 7 for us. So at this point, I stopped prepping for this because it's no longer an interview. It's just a conversation.
Understood and appreciated.
Well, what's nice is I do get to kind of see you a little bit more often because you are, coaching Oscar. And so I get to pop in and do cameos. So we get a chance to catch up as well. And I know you've been very busy with a million things, but of course, everyone's always asking you about your book. And I always toy around with the idea of quote unquote writing something and it's too daunting. So I don't, but I know you've done articles like forever. What's the difference between that process and actual book writing process? Because this is obviously not your first one either, but I know that this one's been kind of in the works.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say I've really have 3 main writing avenues. One is the article. The other are manuals or, more guides and manuals. Mm-hmm. We did that for kettlebells from the center, kettlebells from the ground up, all of the manuals and curriculum that we do within Strong First and FMS. And then this book project, which I maybe calling it a book is a little grandiose, but it'll at least come out in some sort of electronic format. So the writing process, if I break that down into those different categories, if it's an article, it's usually, I really think bite size. I just want to cover 1 to 3 things. It's going to be pretty targeted. I try to be very practical. Even if there is some conceptual sort of information in there, how do we take that and make it actionable and help people from a writing standpoint? So kind of the idea will be there. Somebody will contact me or I'll be working with a student and something will happen in a session. I'm like, that's an article. Or I see something on social media that's a consistent question and I'm like, that's an article. And so I've got 60 some articles that are on the Strong First website, a bunch that I'd done previously within the previous organization, FMS, things of that nature. So I got a bunch of stuff that's out there. And that's not a huge amount. There are people who have written hundreds of articles. So, I'm not saying I'm prolific in my writing.
It's all comparative because, compared to the amount of articles I've written.
Right. True. But I think once I've got that kind of general idea of the topic that I would like to take on, I actually go and I find a quote from anybody really, but it could be somewhat related to the topic. I've used quotes from architects when I'm talking about structure and function. I've used John Wooden quotes, and you can almost always find a John Wooden quote that will work in a given situation. So the quote for me spurs my writing process. It's actually hard for me to get started on an article if I don't go find a quote first.
Okay.
And that kind of is the push creatively to start down that. I'm a pretty lighthearted sort of guy. I'm goofy. I'm good with movie quotes. I try to.
I'm aware.
I try to, and then I try to keep the article pretty lighthearted, but yet practical. In that standpoint, from a teaching standpoint, I believe if you're not laughing, you're not learning. So I try to inject some sort of humor, into the article and make it something that's enjoyable to read. But they're typically pretty short, and I think that's where people run into barriers and feeling like, oh, I could never do that. Well, you're not writing the next great American novel. You're just putting out a 1,200 word article. Mm-hmm. It doesn't 1,200 to 2,000 word article. It doesn't have to be anything that's expansive. And I'll be in the middle of an article and realize that I've just written another article and I need to separate that off and get back to the original idea. But that's kind of the article standpoint. And I think from manuals, it's obviously just very direct. You're trying to transmit information in a very straightforward manner. How do you do this exercise? What are the things you're looking for? What are the coaching cues? It's very practical, very, very
technical.
Direct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very technical.
Yeah.
And then for the book, I kind of did a combination. Yeah. And I think you may have had a sneak peek at it. And there's movie quotes scattered throughout. And that was kind of one of the first feedbacks that I got, because I kind of did the same thing that you did. And I've threatened to write a book for years. And, finally, after cancer and everything and some conversations, it's like, okay, let's get this done. And I had sent an early version to a colleague and he came back with, where are you in this? He's like, I want the movie quotes. Where are you? Like, I'm not reading you in this. And I had kind of done that same thing to myself. I had gotten kind of overwhelmed by the project, by the idea of doing this. And I wasn't writing like me. When I write an article, I have a voice. You can read it and I wrote it. So I went back and really brought that to the book. And but again, it's I have enhance your calm, John Spartan, as one of the quotes that's in there. So there's just all kinds. There's Monty Python in the book. So when I'm getting ready to start a chapter or start a page of the book, coming up with a quote that just helps coordinate that thought and gives some relevance back. Like I had written an article. It was just an email communication with the certified instructors. And I found a George Bernard Shaw quote that the biggest illusion in communication is that it's happened. And like many problems in our life could be that quote pretty much nails a lot of issues.
100%. And do your quotes I know because it's been a long time, like you've cataloged and you have them and we've talked extensively, I think, in movie quotes at some point in time, but like, is it just a simple like Google search, or do you kind of like, oh, I just saw this movie the other day, so it comes to you, or like, what is the process of finding those quotes for you? Do you go down the rabbit hole and then or do you have like an ongoing list or?
No, it's Google. Okay. I'll Google like quotes on structure and function.
Okay. And then it kind of Google does its magic and
Google does its magic. And then you go to Google Images and
you get
there they are. Mm-hmm. And you got to sift through, I'll start with an idea for a quote in one direction, and then I won't find what I'm looking for.
Right.
And, it's kind of like the old Supreme Court justice. I can't tell you what pornography is, but I know it when I see it. I don't know the quote I'm looking for, but I know it when I see it. Right. Exactly. That's the one.
Exactly. I get that, because I also forever have always loved quotes, like even like musically, like back in high school when we would pass notes, like I always wanted to have like a little music quote or something, because it's just fun, and it also shares a bit of who you are, right? Like it's a kind of a window to your personality. So, and I do feel like like that was one of our first conversations. I was like, and you love 80s movies and you love this. And I'm like, I am now connected to Brett Jones. We now be friends. So
that's right.
Yeah.
And it is, I think that, quotes are enduring because they are, Ben Franklin said, family and fish, both of them start to stink after 3 days. I use that one all the time in reference to, family visiting or, things like that. There are these bite-sized little things that really drive points home, really help highlight issues. When I was a quote that I've used for a long time from Winston Churchill, when you're going through hell, keep going. And that whether it was cancer or anything else that I was going through, just kind of keeping that quote in mind that it just they're enduring because they have that impact. Yeah, they can help get us through certain situations. They can highlight certain ideas. So I'm a big fan. Maybe one day someone will quote me.
I think you've already been quoted a lot, sir. I can actually attest to that, being that I'm around Oscar when he's coaching and things. And so I get to hear all of his, mentors and coaches kind of reiterate back. He actually says, he says nothing original. This is all stolen kind of bit. So it's funny. One of my students a long time ago was like, I'm going to write a journal of all of the things that you've said as quotes. I'm like, oh God, because he goes, wow, that's harsh, and they said they're just going to read it to me one day of all of the things I have yelled at my students. And that kind of made me a little paranoid. I'm like, oh man, that would be cringeworthy. And I'm like, taken out of context.
That's right.
So your quotes are going to be all, very thought out and intentional and very purposeful. And mine will just sound like really cruel and just horrible.
You call that a kick?
Yeah, it's just, it can get painful. I talk to a lot of fiction writers, right? I talk to a lot of comic creators and other authors on the show. And one of the things that always makes me curious, because I kind of have experienced what you have, where I'll be writing something. I'm like, oh, now I've gone into something else, but that wasn't the point of this. So then it becomes 2 or 3 things, because I tend to get a little bit tangenty. Podcast listeners are just chuckling now. It's pretty much, I got to change the name of this whole podcast to just tangent. But does writer's block also happen for things that are like nonfiction and very structural and instructional in that nature? Because it's kind of a different world, but I would imagine there are some days you just don't want to write, or it's just not working, or unless you're just Brett Jones and it's always perfect.
No, 100%. And it was funny. It took me a long time after treatment to get back to where I felt like I could write. Where I felt like I could be creative. And, I don't know, I'd love to come up with 3 different excuses for why that was the case. Yeah. But then it was, definitely there's times where I sit down and I'm like, this isn't happening right now. Mm-hmm. Because I do try to, even though I'm writing an article that could be on, one aspect of the swing, there's days where it's just, mental mush and there's just nothing coming out. And so one of the things, and this is going to sound like such a weird connection, but I have 2 games on my phone. Okay. I have Solitaire and I have a wordscape game or whatever it is. And one of the things that and I do that purely just for mental checkout time, right? But what I've discovered is 2 things with the word game. If I shut the app down and I go do something else for 5 or 10 minutes and I open the app back up, the answer is right there. I could sit there and stare at the screen and struggle for what the next word is for 10, 15 minutes. And then I shut the app down and I come back to it later and open the app and I'm like, oh, that's the answer, and I complete the puzzle. So there are times where not grinding is the answer, where stepping away, clearing the headspace, and your brain's background processing on that anyway. So if you just let that background processing happen and then come back to it, the answer is usually waiting, right there. Mm-hmm. but then also playing solitaire, which sounds like, really what the hell lessons could you learn from solitaire? It's awareness. The answer can be sitting right there. I just need to move that 3 over to that 4 and I will, that's going to let me complete the sequence.
Yeah.
And I'll stare at the screen and not see the 3.
Yeah.
So it's opening your mind and having that awareness and allowing, that information to come in. Because sometimes when you're trying to look at every detail, you're going to miss a detail. There's a famous study within, it's a radiology study actually. And it was more on attentiveness and focus. And so I can't remember who the researchers were, but what they did with these radiologists who were looking for tumors in the lungs, they put a picture of a gorilla in the x-ray. And the vast majority of radiologists that were looking at the x-rays did not see the gorilla.
Oh my gosh.
It's because they were looking so hard for the tumors. They didn't see the gorilla.
Hyper-focusing.
Yeah. And so you'd think, well, there's a freaking gorilla in the x-ray. And to novices and people that don't know what they're looking at, you're like, I'm pretty sure there shouldn't be a gorilla in your lung. Like, why is that there?
Yeah.
But the radiologist missed it.
Yeah.
And there's other studies that you can look at. And there's a really famous one where they're showing a video of people coming on and off of a basketball court, bouncing the ball and passing the ball and doing different things. Well, at a certain point in the video, this guy in a gorilla suit walks out onto the court, turns and does the waving of the hands and then walks off. And when you show this to people, if you've given them a task, like count how many basketballs are in there, they don't see the gorilla. Wow.
That's fascinating.
So, yeah, I think we've maybe tiptoed away from writing for just a second, but like to the concept of writer's block and things of that nature, there are times where, you can sit and grind and you can try to force the words out, or you can take a break for 10 or 15, 30 minutes, go do something else, maybe train, maybe get a little workout in, swing some Indian clubs, whatever. And then come back and everything will be much fresher and you'll be much more productive.
Yeah. And that's kind of interesting because I feel like my question now for you is, because you talked about like grinding isn't always a thing or just trying to push through it. And that kind of connects a lot to working out as well, right? So it's totally like asking for a friend, like when you don't want to work out, but you should be, and it's supposed to be a workout day. And I didn't sleep all night. My friend didn't sleep all night. So like, at what point is that process different for you? So first, personally, like you have a process for writer's block, or I'm doing like this type of work. Does that also apply for like, it's my set day of, whatever all your crazy stuff with the huge bell in front of your door that you do. And the one that doesn't go upstairs. I'm like, oh, he's switching up his area. Oscar's like, that bell is ridiculously heavy. And so why would one bring it upstairs? That's why he's downstairs. I was like, oh, okay.
No, true story. When I started training again after cancer, I took the heavy bells out of the third floor office that I have.
Yeah.
And that one ended up there. And so if I want to use it now, I just go to it. I'm
go
not
to
going,
the bell.
Yeah. I'm way easier to move than that bell is.
Exactly. It's really funny though. Cause but is it the same for you? Like, do you like go, okay, you know what, let me go do something else and then I'm going to set this, or are you so programmed with your discipline of workout that it just happens?
I'd say I would kind of shift the conversation just a little bit. Like I enjoy training.
Right.
So for me, 9 times out of 10, like I stop what I'm doing and I get my workout in because I just enjoy training.
Right.
And because of the intuitive nature in which I train, and I'm looking at my training log over here to my right, is I just come up with something for the day that I'm actually excited to go do.
Okay.
Like it's motivating. Now, on the days where I'm like, I'm not going to do it. There's two ways to handle that. Number one is get started. Do the foam roll, do the movement prep, get to that first get up and see where you are. Usually by that point, it's the engine started and it's like, okay, I'm good. We'll get this done. But there's been days where I do the foam roll, I do my movement prep, I get to the first get up and I'm like, nah, I'm just going to do a couple get ups today. And that's it. Just pull the plug.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's days where, to your point, due to missing sleep, maybe, diet wasn't great the day before, and my diet's never great. Other than the fact that I just eat things I enjoy eating. Then I'll skip a day. Like I'm not, I'm being 50 and going through some of the things that I've been through. I recognize there are days where I got to listen to my body and say, nah, today's a rest day. Like I should train today. I'm super busy. I'm call to call throughout the entire day. I've got a bunch of different projects, background processing my brain that I need to get stuff done on. I'm probably not going to train today, and I'm okay with that because I will on Thursday. and so, opening up that schedule, you have to give yourself permission to be able to adapt on the fly.
Yeah.
But you can't always give yourself
right.
Because, and that's people's fear when you read the memes on social media about dedication and, not skipping and, the only bad workout is the one you missed. And, all of these kind of crap memes. You got to be able to adjust, but you can't always give yourself the out. And so over time, if you realize you're always giving yourself the out, a couple of answers there. Maybe you're trying to force yourself to do something that you don't enjoy. Like if you hate barbell training and you have to go in the gym and lift barbells, how long are you going to keep doing that? Like that's not going to be sustainable.
Right.
So at that point, if you're always giving yourself the out, look at what you're trying to do. Maybe It's time to switch things up. Yeah.
Yeah. Makes complete sense because you pretty much started with that answer, which was like, well, I really love doing that. So I don't really have an issue with, I don't want to do that right now. But you're right. Like getting moving and foam rolling but usually by then you're like, I'm feeling better than I did a minute ago. And so, yeah. And it's kind of funny because, I was talking to Oscar. I was like, I don't even know what I'm talking about with Brett today. I'm just going to wing it and we're going to just catch up on air. And you're one of those guests now because we're in the friend zone. So you don't get the very, very extensive prep treatment of like, I have serious interview questions and I am a podcaster thing. But he was like kind of half teasingly like, maybe you could just talk about when students disappoint you or when you don't allow your students to quit. And it's kind of in the same theme of what we're talking about, though, because as a coach, you're now like, which is for me is what I would say is we'll get a good coach because they'll help hold you accountable. And they're usually very motivating and they're the ones that kind of help guide you. Because when you're trying to do things on your own, unless you're Brett Jones or someone who literally like, this is your life and what you enjoy doing, lifelong martial artists, lifelong, athletes, like that's what they do, right? That's who they are. But average people, I really think having that environment, whether it's a class environment or an actual expert to guide you is really, it takes that part out of it, right? Because then you just have to show up, which is a whole nother conversation. But as the coach, right? At what point are you kind of like making that determination of knowing like, okay, I really need to keep pushing this person? Or like, is there like a bunch of factors or is there a formula in your brain that you use as you coach people to kind of know like, okay, are we going to grind through this or where the limits are?
I'm going to separate that into two conversations. Okay. From the motivation standpoint, if you are hiring me for accountability and motivation, I don't do that. If I ask you to do something and you don't do it, I'm going to shrug my shoulders and say, okay, like moving on. Like I know what you need to be doing. You're choosing not to do it. we should probably answer that question at some point as to why you're choosing not to do it. But I'm not the guy that's sending you the text. Did you get your workout in today?
Right.
That's not me. I'll meet you halfway. I will guide you. I will coach you. You will know what to do and change and fix and what you should be doing. And it's like a certain unnamed individual that we both know, who at one point with the programming took it in a direction that I maybe had not suggested. And so we had to readjust. Now things are moving forward. But I give people some wiggle room, right?
Yeah.
Life happens. There's stress going on that people may not share. I'm thinking of a story from Coach Boyle, Coach Mike Boyle in the Boston area.
Yeah, another pal.
Yeah, he's great. And he was telling the story because it's with trainers. What some trainers will say is, "Well, this person isn't serious enough to work with me. I'm going to fire that client because they're not serious enough to work with me." And Coach Boyle, he had this guy come in and he'd been missing some sessions, and Coach Boyle was going to go up to him and ask him, if he wanted to re-up because, he'd been missing a bunch of sessions.
Right.
And, if this isn't working for you, it's okay. This guy comes back with the story of, I lost my wife this year, and just getting these sessions in when I could do it really helped me get through. And so you guys were a big part of me handling that loss. And Coach Boyle's like, well, I had no idea that was going on.
Yeah. And
so, and I hate to say it, but it's usually younger trainers who think they're all that in a bag of chips. And, something may be going on that I don't know about. And the fact that you're missing sessions, it's okay, because this isn't where your attention really needs to be right now, but I'm here for it. If you want to get in that next session, I'm good. Let's do it. We need to make an adjustment. Let's make an adjustment. Like I'm good. So from the motivation standpoint, I'll meet you where you are. I'll help guide you where you want to be. I ain't dragging you.
Right.
Now, in the direction of when to grind, when do you kind of hold that accountability and put a little pressure on people? I do that so rarely. Usually the people that I'm working with, they bought in, they're dedicated, they're going to do it. And so I just get to have that conversation very rarely, but I do think from a general standpoint, it's right back to that conversation of, it's okay to adjust, but don't always give yourself an out.
Yeah.
And if you're always giving yourself an out, let's figure out why.
Yeah. I find the same with the Kung Fu training and everything with the balance, because it, like you said, people you don't have also in it, for our environment, it's a class environment, like to go up and be like, so what's going on in your life right now? And why weren't you, you don't have all this time to kind of delve in, and you don't really know what people are going through. So like, we try to do check-ins, but it's funny whenever I see people like at Publix or out and about at a store, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I haven't been in class because of this. And I'm like, all right, I didn't ask, it's okay.
Yeah,
like we know
good.
We're not the center of everyone else's world. I get that it's my center and my world, but it's funny what people think you expect. Right. And I think that's part of it, where if you have a coach, that already is the accountability part, because we kind of teased about like, well, we don't want to let Brett Jones down. We don't want to let coach down because it makes us feel bad. Right. And that's not you putting that on this client or student, but it's more like, for us, like we want to make our teachers and coaches proud. We want to do that. And if you're a good student, then that kind of naturally happens. Like you shouldn't have to drag someone into the gym. That definitely, like you said, this is probably not where you want to be if you're dragging them in there. So yeah. So what's kind of interesting is actually, I was looking at the calendar. I'm like, oh my gosh, we haven't talked on the podcast. We haven't talked in almost like 6-8 months or something. So I was like, oh, we're way due. We're way past due. And I was looking, and I think it's 4 years now that we've been we've had you on air because the first person from your family I actually had on air was Cam, and it's March, so it's around the time of March for Our Lives anniversary time, and when all of the legislative stuff with the gun control was going on and the walkouts with the kids. And so I had her on, and she was amazing. And that's kind of how we actually reconnected was through her, ironically. And so I just wanted to check in, see how she's doing. And I know like she's off in college now, I think. And so it's just crazy how quickly time goes. But yeah, I was just thinking back like, wow, we've really kind of come full circle here. And it's like 4-year anniversary.
Wow. That's impressive. I didn't realize it'd been that long.
Mm-hmm.
And I've certainly reached the point in my life where I'm like, yeah, that was just last year. And somebody's like, no, that was like 6 years ago.
Yes.
But she's doing fantastic. She is at university now, and Kent State University. She's part of the student government. She's actively involved. Her and the student government group were at the Columbus state capitol and talking to representatives and against 2 bills that are up for vote within Ohio. And, she just continues to be a leader and a motivator and an advocate on different issues. And she's just great.
I know. I knew she would be. Like, I only got to talk to her for an hour, and I was just so blown away. And it actually started because we had seen her post online, and Oscar's like, oh my gosh, you definitely need to have her, because I was looking for youths to have on to speak out about it. And I mean, when I spoke to her, I was like, wow, she's just exceptional. And I mean, it's so wonderful to hear that we have, younger individuals who are interested in the legislative process and wants to be an advocate and wants to get involved, because that's really how it's going to make a difference. And as you know, it's like something I've been really passionate about lately and working on. And I'll be straight up honest. I hate the legislative process, and I hated going to Tallahassee. Again, I'm in Florida, so it's a bit more of it's talk about when they always say battleground state and all that with votes and all. I mean, that's like not even the right word for it. It is just really, really, really polarizing, and it's really, really stressful. So I know from my experience of just everything that I went through with my bill, it was just oh man, it's not for the lighthearted, that's for sure. So I am very excited to hear that the younger, stronger individuals are coming up that are going to be able to fight those fights, because it's really tough. And I don't know what that world is like until just this last year. It's been really quite a learning experience for me, because I didn't do student government in high school or anything like that. I mean, if I did, I wouldn't remember anything anyway. It was like over 20 something years ago. So
yeah, long enough. Yeah, basically. But yeah, it's kind of wild, right? Like that whole world. So, and you know me, I just dabble in so many different things. I don't know how I get myself into these situations. I say that a lot, and I think you say that a lot too, for different reasons. Like, I think we're like, well, how did I get myself into this situation? Now I've committed to this, and now I've committed to that. I think off air, you and I were talking about the great superpower of saying no. It's huge, and I struggle with it. And just before we move on from that, because you're trying to gloss over your work and accomplishments there, from a distance, I have been very impressed in seeing you pursue that and going through that process and being an advocate for a really important issue and something that just blows my mind that we even have to legislate that. Like the idea that that's not. I don't know what to say about that, other than the fact that we have to legislate it is insane. But again, I just been impressed by your work on that and how you've pursued it. So
thank you so much.
Didn't want you to get out of here without highlighting that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, you're right. And what's interesting about that is I didn't realize it wasn't there, right? I mean, I knew I didn't learn about AAPI history growing up. And I know as an adult looking back, oh, this is why I felt certain ways. This is why this, and then you look historically, and then you go to look at legislation, because like no one in their right mind goes through and reads like Florida congressional like record. You don't read the legislative bills and you're like, oh, interesting. There are certain things that are included and things that are excluded specifically. And then you look nationwide and you're like, oh, lots of things are excluded nationwide. And I'm like, wow, we have a long way to go. And education is already kind of a lacking area. I feel like we just focus on test taking versus educating. I think they're two different things. And I think our country's gotten confused about that. But I do appreciate your kindness. So thank you.
Well, I think it's fascinating, and just to key on something that you just said there, and kind of tying in with a conversation I actually had recently with Cameron, the concept of critical race theory and the knee-jerk reaction you get from people when you say systemic racism, that there is systemic racism in America. There is an automatic knee-jerk reaction. Yeah. That no, that's not true. Well, it is. And the reason we're unaware of it is, to your point, we're not taught it. I'm going to go kind of around the circle here, but I watched Watchmen, right? And so the opening
HBO
of
Watchmen,
the HBO Watchmen series. Ooh. So the opening of Watchmen is the Tulsa massacre. I had no idea that I was watching a version of a real event. Oh, I didn't know that had happened.
Isn't that frustrating?
Insane. Yeah. It's insane. And after the fact, and there were the specials that came out, the burning of Black Wall Street and the Tulsa. I think it was titled Tulsa Massacre. There were two different specials that came out right around the same time. And, they had interviews with people from Tulsa who grew up in the school system, who did not know that this had happened in their town. Yeah. There are laws on the books, whether they've been undone or not, that very clearly make it clear that things were put in place for a reason based on race and whatever. So when people argue and have that knee-jerk reaction, it's usually, and I'm always looking for people's better angels. It's usually because they just don't know. I didn't know. And just having my kind of mind blown by the fact that this could occur and not be something that's taught on an ongoing basis across our country is insane to me. So it's just kind of keying in on that idea that people just don't know. And now, because the legislation is usually written by national organizations and then given to the state houses so that a representative can sponsor the bill, they don't know what's in the bill. Cameron had that experience when she was talking to one of these people in Columbus, in Ohio. And this woman didn't know what was in the bill that she was sponsoring. Yeah. Because she didn't write it. She got it from a national organization. Wow. So it's like, what are we doing? Yes,
exactly. My experience when I went to Tallahassee for the first time. I'm like, wow, this is how it works. This is very inefficient. It's like how I feel every time I go to the hospital. I was like, I need to make some changes here. Like, this shouldn't take this long to get, a pillow or whatever it is you're looking for. It's just so inefficient. And there's a million reasons for it. But I feel like, wow, but this is like the United States government. It's like kind of scary, right? It's really sad because I always feel uninformed. So I'm constantly, and it sucks because you have to actually go out of your way to seek out this information. And it's not actually easy to find. I mean, other than the Google, but what I'm saying is it's like, these are things we should just kind of know and have been taught growing up as children because it's our country. So I'm like, what was I learning in American history? Because like, it's just, it's all glossed over or not mentioned, like you said. And then we have to look to like future HBO fictional quote unquote shows to get like information on real life events. I mean, yeah, same thing with, HBO Max's Warrior. Like people are like, wow, oh, that was just like, this is like fiction. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of historical events that happened there that have actually happened. Like these rioting, these, hangings, these things happened. And people are like, what? But it's a TV show. Like, yes, but, so yeah. Which is why sometimes TV shows aren't just entertainment. Like you learn, but then again, you have to like do your research to learn more about it, watch a documentary on the actual events. And most people aren't willing to do that work, right? So this is where we find those gaps in education. And but speaking of TV, actually, before I go into that, we were going to talk about you learning to say no to things.
Yeah, I tried to get past that too.
Now we have you on record and I can go, okay, look at this time frame in this podcast. You're overdoing it, Brett.
You actually said no once. No, I was on a call with a colleague and we were talking about a potential project. And he goes, well, do you have time to take this on? And I'm like, no, I don't. We were joking as we were getting started here. I'm up to here. I got to lean back to get my nose above water to be able to take a breath. Like I just got a lot going on at the moment.
Yeah.
And I've joked for years that being lazy and busy is a really bad combo. And I'm only half joking. I enjoy my shutdown time at night and trying to clear my head and try to be productive versus busy. I think a lot of us mistake busy for productive, but I do take on too much. And that's been a problem for a long time. But I may actually be getting over the cusp and learning to say no.
Well, I mean, it's a process, right? So it's not like all of a sudden we're cured and we can constantly put our self-care above all, but in incremental steps, right? So you said no, very good, kudos. And next time, as that goes on, you can improve on that. And I know that you and I, one of the things that we've talked about a lot, and one of the ways that we kind of unwind and have our entertainment is from some of the TV shows and movies. And what I love about our conversations is that we particularly enjoy that reread and rewatch concept, where it's like sometimes you just don't want to be disappointed by taking on a new program and just being like, what a waste of my time. Why did I even bother with this, when like I am okay with rewatching things that I know I've enjoyed, but maybe it's been so long I don't have all the details, or maybe not. Like Oscar's rewatching Curb Your Enthusiasm for like the third time all the way through. And it's just at this point right now for me, it's painful because, it's like painful comedy. But we talked to you a lot about Battlestar Galactica. And so we were rewatching that and we had to tell you about it. And my mind was blown that I didn't know in the middle of season 2, you're supposed to stop and watch the Razor movie. And then that there was a web series. And then I've talked to a lot of other people that also didn't know this existed. So like, how did we miss that? Because obviously you were in the know, but.
Well, I think because those things, if I'm correct, those things kind of got put in place after the fact.
Okay.
Like Razor did not come out in the middle of season 2. Razor came out at whatever time point. So, but that story fits at that time in the series.
I see. Okay.
And so I think that was kind of like after they were done and they had filmed these extra movies, then it's
okay.
Going back, and it's like watching the Marvel universe in actual
order
of that you should watch it, not the order that it came out. Because Captain America, the First Avenger, obviously, as the title would indicate, should probably be where you start.
And so, why do you love Battlestar Galactica so much? Because you and I, we always talk about we love it so much, but I'm curious as to like what it is about it for you.
It's the story. It's the people. It's the stories. It's Starbuck and her, what a great portrayal and just a great performance. And, is she crazy? Is she actually, tapped into something that is a little beyond, and, the father-son dynamic, the friend dynamic between Adama and Ty. And then, it's just all those stories. And that's one of the things that I think, sci-fi almost has a freedom to go deeper into some of those situations. The backdrop is this fanciful or sci-fi sort of situation, but that, like I said, that father-son dynamic, that friend dynamic, the really tumultuous husband-wife dynamic of Ty and Ellen and Ellen. And I mean, there's just, but that's why I was watching it. I just the stories are so powerful. Those interpersonal things.
Yeah, and the characters. I agree. Yeah. I think at the heart of most really good books and films and TV shows is that, right? Like if you have really great characters and storytelling, and because I'll tell people how much I love it. They're like, oh, I don't like sci-fi. And I'm like, okay, yes, it's sci-fi because they're in a spaceship and there's space and, we're in another time period that's like unknown, but like, it's not really sci-fi. Like you just said, it's really about relationships and about how those characters interact with one another. And of course, there's that bigger thing of the Cylons and the robots and all of that. But I think like it's secondary to all of the relationships. And I just find it fascinating because, I mean, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen that yet, but like, it's just funny because it all comes full circle, right? And then like at the end, you're just like, it's happened before and it shall happen again. And then you can get real meta with this and just like, wow, it's just kind of like living, right? Like when you see this and you go and you start to actually learn a little bit about history and you're like, we're so horrified by the events of right now. And then we look back just a little bit, not even that far, and go, oh, we didn't learn from that time. Oh, because we weren't taught it. So this is like really does tie back into everything we talked about today. And it's just kind of frustrating actually, and like a little depressing.
It is. And I think that, Battlestar is interesting in that, again, spoiler alert. For those of you that haven't seen it yet, you may want to hit fast forward for 15 or 20 seconds here. But as you're watching it, and there's so much that's familiar within it. It's different, but it's familiar. Mm-hmm. And but you get to the end and you realize that this is something that happened long ago. And it's like, oh, wait a second, like that just totally changes the perception. Mm-hmm. For me, it did. Like, oh my gosh, this wasn't a futuristic thing, right? This was anachronistic, and now we're looking back and we're making those. To your point, we're making those same mistakes again. Mm-hmm. And so it's that for me. I got to the end of the series, and I'm like, head explodes. Like,
the
oh my god,
the series was very head exploding. In general, like there was just so much happening. And like, that's why we really wanted to rewatch it, because it was so overwhelming at the time. Like, I can't even really explain. Like, I remember the end scenes, like in my mind of, Lee in the field, and then like how it fast forwards to like, you're seeing all the little modern day times, like the window displays and everything. But like all the stuff on the ship, like it's just like, it was so intense. There was so much going on. But you're right. It was like, wait a minute, that was the past.
and yet that's why things were so familiar yet different. Mm-hmm. And like it for me, that ending just tied everything back together, and the 13 colonies and how they were made, and, all of that stuff. It's like, we weren't looking forward into the future. We were looking at a past that influenced us. So it's, I just, strong, superior acting. And I have to say, BBC, whether it's Battlestar Galactica or if it's the Sherlock series or Unforgotten, or like so many of these series, they are, their production quality, the acting, what they're doing is just super. Yeah.
And Oscar and I kind of like laugh about this because we'll probably be dead, or maybe not, but like we've totally given in to the whole Cylons in our house. Like we talk to Siri, all my lights are controlled by whatever. I'm like, they're totally going to like take over and totally, I mean, it's totally going to be like Battlestar Galactica. And he's like, oh, definitely. What do you think? Do you think they're totally going to rise up and take over? Because we always tease, because we don't have our own biological children, that no one's taking care of us when we're older. I mean, having biological children also don't guarantee that, by the way, everybody, that you're having someone that's going to take care of you. So we always say, we don't need money. We just need really good food. But we do need money in the future for our robot nurses, because that's the only person that's going to take care of us. So, but I mean, do you think do you want to be that fly in the wall in however many years it is till this actually happens?
It's probably around the corner, way closer than we think.
Yeah.
And there are some good articles and good information out there on AI and where we are with that. And there's, it's way scarier than you think.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's actually because because of the open sourcing and the idea that in a lab someplace, unbeknownst to other people, there's somebody that's ready to push the button and activate an AI, and we're constantly making progress, and there's meetings on this within the computer programming world. Like now, since we're kind of at the precipice, there's a variety of people going, should we do this?
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know. Because I mean, on one hand, like obviously modern technology has made our lives so convenient, but I get that those people who we would call paranoid, or, oh, you're just not adapting to the times. I kind of get the hesitance, because, if you've watched BSG too many times, like maybe like we have, like, we're like, oh my God, they're going to rise up and take over. But they kind of might rise up and take over.
Well, we don't understand our own consciousness, intelligence, and existence. We're constantly struggling to understand that. Giving birth to a new consciousness and intelligence. Maybe we're not the people to be doing that because we don't understand our own yet. So, yeah, and then the thing that always boggles my mind about that is anytime we're talking about consciousness, intelligence, and researching the brain, that is the brain studying itself, which is just bizarre.
Yeah, that's a little bit mind blowing. I'll be thinking about that all day. She just said. Yeah,
it's a level of introspection and investigation that's a little bizarre in the universe, and I think that we don't understand our own. Should we be giving birth to another?
I know. And I mean, that's kind of like I'm all for science and space exploration and understanding and doing all of that so that we can continue to evolve and adapt and everything. But I'm also a little bit like, well, there's a lot of things to fix on Earth versus trying to find this, new planet or the space race of like the billionaires going up and just like, yeah, we flew around for 5 minutes, and like resources going towards that versus like so much that's going on here that needs fixing, so there's always that kind of struggle in my mind as well. Like, I don't know.
Allocation of resources and time, where do we want to put that? And as long as there's a payoff and there's a connection in the end, I'm okay with the exploration and expenditures, but there's got to be a connection at some point.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's something I've been meaning to ask for 7 episodes now, and I keep forgetting. And so I did actually write this one down. And it's your Ask Brett Jones Facebook page. Can you tell me what that means? And like when you imagine, oh, Ask Brett Jones, and then you go to this page, all you get are these like crazy memes. How did that start? And talk to me about that.
So a gentleman, strong first instructor named Tim Schumann, started it.
He's in Orlando. Yes,
he is in Orlando. Tim's a great guy, and he started the page. I did not, and it was purely for the purpose of, just like you said, it's memes, it's jokes, it's just funny stuff. I try to keep it PG, PG-13 at the most. We have some newer members that haven't got the memo about that, but and then people will get on and ask a serious question, like, oh, to your point, like, oh, ask Brett Jones, hey, this is happening in my clean, and some of the people that know that it's for entertainment purposes will be like, "What are you doing?" I'll answer the question.
Like a Windex, like article or something. This is how you clean.
I'll answer the question because I want to honor that
you're
person.
So nice.
But it's entertainment purposes, and it just started. Really, it just started as a joke. Like Tim was just giving me a hard time about all of my movie quotes and things. So but it's fun. I get a chuckle out of some stuff that gets posted there.
Yeah. It definitely wasn't what I expected, because Oscar one day, and this is a long time ago, right, was like, you need to see this website, this Facebook page. I'm like, I don't go on Facebook. He goes, yeah, but this one's called Ask Brett Jones. I'm like, oh, okay. Does he do like Q&A? And so I've been meaning to ask you about it because it's been years. And it's funny because we were talking about, this is our 4 years since we've really been speaking and connecting. But I think in one of our episodes, we talked about that actual first time that I met you, which was in Orlando at one of the kettlebell certifications and everything. And I was like in your little, I was the people that came in to that didn't know anything so that the trainers could show if they were teaching or not. And I was like, I want to be in Brett Jones's group because I've heard him in my house for years on video, and I need to make sure I get in his group. And so they literally put me in your group because I'm very persuasive. And so
absolutely.
But I mean, obviously you don't remember that time, but I do. And luckily I did make Oscar take a picture with you. And so yeah, it's just crazy how time goes so quickly. And now we're talking about the Cylons taking over.
Well, and I recently put out an article on Strong First, 20 years, 20 observations. And it was February of 2002 that I got certified with Pavel, and I started teaching with him the next year. Yeah. So, 20 years of being certified with him and 19 years of teaching with him. And it is just bizarre to look back over that time frame. And I can't imagine, there's pivotal decisions in your life. And that was certainly one of them, the decision to get a kettlebell and go get certified. And, I don't know where I would be had I not made that one decision. And at the time, everybody's like, it's a fad, and nobody will be doing this in 5 years. And I'm like, right. No, I'm pretty sure this is gonna last.
Yeah.
But it's to have that time in, so to speak, pardon me, is really it's a mind bender at times. Like because I feel like I just got started.
Well, it doesn't look that way because, of course, I follow you on IG, and Oscar and I are just like, seriously, that's what he's doing now. And especially, all that you've been through and everything, and just coming back stronger, and just super inspiring stuff. So we're always in awe of you. But it's been awesome, just on a personal level, to be able to have conversations with you on and off air. And we actually always kid about it. I'm like, all of the people I enjoy talking to don't live in my city so much. It's interesting. You have these connections with people. And I always ask people, is it because they don't live here? So there's not too much of one person. And you're like, oh, I really enjoy them because they're not here. But I don't know. It just works out that way.
Definitely. I mean, I've got the same situation, and I've worked from home for coming on 8 or so years now. And have been doing online training and remote working. I mean, I've got people that I work with that are in Italy, and just from a work perspective, not even from a student perspective, but, it's Italy. It was Denver, California, just all over the place. And so the only way to connect is virtually. And nobody's in my hometown. I was joking earlier that my one friend in Pittsburgh, wants to go grab lunch. And I'm trying to fit that into my schedule.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is interesting because the old thing that I think kind of correlates. I don't want my stories don't always have points, but
but they're always good.
You can become friends with someone you don't know who's a roommate. It's really hard to make your friend a roommate. that usually ends friendships, right?
Yes.
So, there is that idea that, if you were around me on a more regular basis, you'd be like, yeah, no.
I was thinking the reverse, and you'd be like, oh my God, she's here again. But this is not true, because I usually show up with food and things. So usually people are like, oh, okay.
I'm in.
But I can be a lot. So I would think it would be the reverse, It
would absolutely be the reverse. We'd be breaking bread on a regular basis.
Definitely, 100%. So, well, we're coming up on our hour. So I'll have you on again, and not in such a long period of time. I think we need to catch up. But in keeping with the theme of self-care, feel free to say no if you don't have the time for it, and I won't be offended. But I know that we will catch up at some point again. So, but it's always a pleasure, Brett, to catch up, and thanks for doing so on air. And Brett Jones, everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mimi.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/SifuMimiChan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook.